So here we go. Oh. Hi, everybody. Hey, sorry for being late. The price of trying out different hard drives is that you sometimes disconnect the video feed of your camera. Guilty. So I hope you all are doing well. This has been a very, very fun little whirlwind of a week. We have the ability now to go to an empty layer, and I could just say, I want to add Omnisphere to this. So I just go here and say Omni, if I can spell. And just like that, I've added Omnisphere with Unify 1.10. We have the ability to quick load any plugin. We could go to user directories. Look at all those plugin guru libraries. Let's go Mega Magic pads. Let's have a BPM pad join this. Turn it down. If I want, I can change the colors. If you click the bullets, you've got all the abilities, all these colors and stuff like that. We're going to go through all the cool things in Unify 1.10. I hope you all are doing well. If you guys are at the SuperBooth and you're joining, you guys get extra bonus points because being pulled away from SuperBooth to say hi on the live stream is a valiant effort, and I thank you for that. But guess what? I have a special guest to join us today. None other than my dear friend. We've been at this for a long time. Let's go to Skype and everybody say hello to Shane. Hey, Shane! Yay! So how are you doing? Good. Feels good to have this one out to everybody. Yes. Right. Yeah. Well, software always gets updated. There's yes. Let me tell you, I think I've told people before, I have sat in the room in Japan when the engineers would come in and say, we're sorry we couldn't put this feature in. Please wait for next year for the next product. Because it's hardware, it's not software. So this is a much different situation where if something isn't working, we get replies, people tell us about the problem, and we can then... are you guys getting audio? Oh, Shane is muted. Oh, okay. No, I hear you, but I need to route you. So loop back. Oh. I have you on video on screen, but you're talking and they can't hear you. That's because I need to go over here. There. Now Shane can be heard. Hello.
Hello. Can I be heard now?
Does everybody hear Shane?
Yes. Well, I hear myself. I can hear feedback or echo.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. It's Skype will sort it out.
Yes. There you are. So they didn't hear you talking about what you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. It'll come up later.
Yes. Okay, good. Everybody's saying yes, so they can hear you. Yeah, it's funny, you know. One click in software. I have, you know, Skype is forgetting its settings. Every time Shane and we talk daily, right? Every time we talk, I have a moment where it's silent to him because I'm frantically going around and going to the settings and turning things on that get never remembered. Talk about bugs. I mean, that's how they are. Get the Shane video instead. So we are here to celebrate the release of Unify 1.10. And what a joyous update this is. It adds some much requested features to Unify. A lot of the past updates, we're going to go down memory lane. In fact, here, Shane, I can give you this update banners graphic folder so you can look at these too. Let me go to Skype. I got to do it this way. So I'm going to move this over here. 1 second, guys. I'm just going to get Shane something so he can see. He doesn't know I'm going to be dropping this on him. So this is kind of...
I never know what you're going to drop on me.
What request is he going to ask for next? Oh, no. It's a zip file you can download.
I see. Okay.
But it has all of the Plugin Guru banners announcing all of the updates to Unify since version 1.
Oh, I see. Yes.
So we can go with everybody and show them sequentially the insane track it has been to get to where we are. It's pretty exciting. But first of all, before we do that, let's talk really quickly about the high features, and Shane can add some color commentary while we talk about these things. So the first big thing in this update that is a lifesaver for everybody and makes Unify 10 times more valuable than any other plugin on the planet is that you can just simply right-click where it says the name of any plugin, say SER, and load Serum just like that. I didn't have to navigate. If I wanted to do this the old school way, I have to sit here and I have to go to here and then scroll all the way down to X. You have to remember Serum is made by X for Records. So, you know, at this point, I have so many folders, and a lot of these are made by developers like Rafael Redna. He made Xenos. Well, if I want, instead of remembering that folder name, all I have to do here is go here and go SEN, and there it is, and load it. So it's such a lifesaver. Everybody that uses plugins will want to have this because now you can see all your plugins, and you can simply type just a few letters and off it shows up. So what do you have to add to that, my friend?
So, you know, you don't need to type the full name of the plugin.
Right.
It will give you the full list, and then the more you type in that box, the more it will try to match and then cut down the list.
Yes.
So you just want to get to the point where you can at least see the one you want. The first item in the list will always be selected or highlighted.
Right.
Then you can use your arrow keys to move down to the one you want.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to type the whole thing. And also, it's not just trying to match from the beginning, like on the name. If you do happen to remember the vendor name, for example, you remember, oh, it's something by you. I don't remember what it's called. You just type u-he, and then it'll show you all the u-he plugins.
Right. That's the other thing I love with this is it's real-time updating. In Omnisphere, they have a search window, but if you want to search, you have to type in piano and hit return before it will give you the results. So it's not doing it in real time. What's really wonderful, we got that bug in Omnisphere where I gotta go like that. What's great here is as you're typing, if I go U dash, right there, just U and a dash, and now I have all Uhi's plugins because it's looking at the company name. So it's not looking at just the plugin name, but the company name. So if you remember the company name, Fab Filter, they make a lot of cool effects. Type Fab, and there they are. They're all right there to go through.
Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is it'll match your text with whatever is listed there.
Right.
And that includes the name of the plugin, the name of the vendor, and whether it's a VST or a VST3 or whatever. Sometimes you need to specify that. So it'll match on anything that's there.
Yeah, such a great feature. It's really wonderful. Next feature that is really, really cool that people have asked for is the ability to change the color of the layers. I'll put the small box right here while we're at this viewing, because when you change applications, Skype goes away. As the way that this works is each of the layers under the bullet where you have the settings for deleting and copying and so forth, at the bottom of the list is change layer color, and we now have a custom color palette. This is the 18 color palette. I picked out like the most standard red, green, blue kind of family of colors, plus 6 shades of grayscale. And I'll tell you, it's really, really cool. If you want to have a really cool look, just go through here and use all the different shades of grayscale as you go down the list. It makes for a really, really cool look. I really love how this looks. So go like this and like that.
But you probably found, John, that it's not, you can't just pick any old color.
Yes.
It basically works best with dark colors.
Yes.
And because otherwise, if you go with a color that's too bright, what'll end up happening is that it'll try to put the white text on top of it,
Right.
and you won't see it.
Right.
We talked about that, you and I. You said, is there a way to auto-invert the text? And I said, well, that's a problem because we also use colored text to indicate if a plugin is load properly,
right,
or if it's loaded bridged and whatever. So we decided, no, better to work with just dark
right,
colors,
right,
or darker colors anyway.
Right. Yeah, the way that it works, the rule of thumb, because I'm not going to get it right now. We're not going to get into it, but I'll be making a follow-up video with instructions. This color palette is something you can make your own color palettes. And there's a text area. There's actually a folder. If you look inside of presets, there's a folder that says color palettes. That is right there for you to make your own palettes. And you can define all the way down to even like specific areas, like auxiliary buses can have its own set of color palettes, separate from instruments, separate from MIDI effects, separate from the master if you want. Or what we have here is what we call a master color palette, where it overrides and it's just the same colors for all the palettes. The color that it is choosing is this dark background color in the background. And then from there, it creates the lighter colored pieces depending on the color you choose. So if you look at this color, like this is a dark purple, right? That dark purple is the background, and then it makes this middle purple and the bright purple. So if you start with just a standard bright green, then it's going to make an even brighter green and an even brighter green for this. And then this text up here that you can read, you can't read. So you really quickly learn real quickly what color range you use for selecting colors. But you can make your own color palettes, and we'll be showing you how to do it. There's no limit. If you want to have a color palette where there's 200 separate colors, we haven't done that yet, so I don't even know how it looks, but you can do that. We'll figure that out. The other thing that's really important.
I'll be writing that one out for the manual too.
Huh?
I'll be writing a page on that for the manual.
Yes.
Usually, I have already got the manual updated by the time a new version comes out. But again, our time scale for this was really compressed because we wanted to get the bug fixes out.
Yes. Yes. The other thing that's important to recall about this, there's two things that are important. Number one, the color is saved into the patch. Meaning when I send this patch to someone else, they don't have to have this color palette file registered or somewhere stored on their computer. It's saved in the patch what this color is. So that way, once you set up the colors and save the patch, those colors are in the patch. They're not looking to anything inside of Unify. So everybody else that gets the patch in 1.10 will see those colors. And furthermore, on the settings page, there is an accessibility checkbox you can check. And by doing that, now when you load patches that have color layers, it turns the color layers off so that it looks like this. Just back to the normal standard Unify colors. So if you don't want, if it's for your vision or else you're just not interested in seeing the color somebody picked for patches, you can turn that off. So that's another nice thing with this. Anything else to add, my friend?
Well, other than that, as I said, I'll be writing this up for the manual.
Yeah.
And there's actually a whole bunch of details about things about setting up your color palettes. We don't have a beautiful GUI for it. It's something where, again, you have to create some text files. Right. And you may need to use some other tools like a paint program or whatever to find your colors and get the codes for them, the text codes for them. But you'll be able to show that in the video, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I use the Adobe Color Picker. They have a color picker online that you can use. I can get Shane the address for that and stuff like that. But you can use this. I'll show you guys real quickly on the page here. But they have the Adobe Color Picker where you can choose a color, and as you change this, it can even like change to like complementary colors that can work with it. And this is the number you need right here. And again, the manual will talk about it. I'll do a video talking about how to create a palette and update it and so forth. But you need to have that hex ID number for the color because that's the number that is used to design the colors in the palettes. But it works and it's really wonderful. Anything else before we move on to the other big feature?
Nothing else from me.
Okay. The other big thing that was added is something that is a lifesaver for all of us because so many of these plugins are getting fairly complicated. Let's call up Hive, for example, right? Here's Hive. And let me get this so it's playing. Let's say I wanted to play and I wanted to have this cutoff. Maybe I want to be able to do that in my song, right? Well, the way it works, if you want to automate anything in your DAW that is a plugin loaded into Unify, you simply need to assign it to a macro knob, because the knobs are what are seen inside of your DAW. There's 32 knobs, and they each have a default name, and then you can rename it whatever you want. Let's call this is the Hive filter. All I have to do now, one of the new shortcuts is that you can click in the little bullet and choose link parameters, or the new shortcut is just to right click on the knob and it will open up the color, the color palette. It will call up the assign target parameters page, right? And I'm gonna move this out of the way for a moment so we don't need to see that, but here's Hive. If I was to try to find that filter cutoff knob inside of Hive, I hit the plus button, instrument, here's Hive, and it's an endless number of parameters. I have to find filter 1 cutoff. It's right here, right? Trying to find that for a lot of people is really hard. You don't, just to even recognize what the name of the knob is and stuff like that is really difficult. So we have come up with a really spiffy, simple system. All you have to do is click the Guru ear, this little ear icon in the upper corner of the target parameters, and move a knob. And actually, here, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to use the full range before I click a parameter, and that way it will give me, boom, the full range of filter 1 cutoff. Just like that, it connected. Now, and if I wanted to go to something else, let's say on the effects, I wanted to also bring up this reverb, which is really cool. Here's another effect. It's another, if I wanted to, I'd have to hit plus. I'd have to go down the list and find it. All I have to do now is hit the Guru ear, go over to the reverb mix, touch this, and it's immediately added. So now, it's that easy to add any parameter, not just from Hive, but literally, from any plugin. I could say at the same time, I wanted also to go to, let's say to the auxiliaries. Well, the auxiliary sends and stuff like that is something that don't listen right now to the Guru ear. That's something we'll probably be adding in the future. But if you wanted to add those types of parameters, all you have to do is hit the little plus, go to the layer of your choice. Let's say I want to go to the drums, and here's auxiliary send 1. And now I have that set up.
Yeah, so I can actually kind of fill in a little bit of detail on that. So the ear basically works by listening to parameter changes that are in plugins. Mm-hmm. And that includes even Unify's built-in plugins and bundled plugins.
Yes.
But it does not include the parameters of that same Unify that you're looking at. So that would be things like layer levels and pans and send levels and so on. But in general, those aren't difficult to find. Right. And yes, eventually I'll make it so that somehow you can adjust those or set those, connect those with the ear. But everything takes time.
Yes. So people are asking, like, when will the macro knobs send out MIDI CCs?
There's something about that. There's something for that in this update.
Yes.
I've added a new built-in effect called, it's a MIDI effect called CC Sender.
Right.
And basically what it does is it exposes a whole bunch, 129 parameters, which you can link to knobs. But what they do whenever that plugin doesn't do anything else, except anytime you change one of its parameters, it sends out a MIDI CC message that corresponds to that parameter. Right.
So you can go over here.
It's a little tricky. It can be a little tricky to use, but the key is that it allows you to control where those MIDI CC messages get sent.
Right. So the way that this works, as you can see, is you can load up a MIDI effect. I haven't loaded the full version, so I don't have it in. It's probably show up inside of utilities, right? I would think. But I don't have it there. I have it. If you don't have anywhere else, you can go to swap, go to here and go to the built-in, and that will list all the built-in effects inside of Unify. There's CC Mapper, which will remap CCs to a different MIDI CC. CC Writer is a real-time pump house sending CC data, and then the new one is CC Sender. And with this one, you have a list, and you can control. Now you can assign this to your knob so that it could be sending out MIDI CC on whatever of these MIDI CC numbers you need it to send out on. So if I wanted this filter cutoff to be also doing something there, all I have to do is right click on this. I actually, since it's a MIDI effect, I could go over here. I could go say I wanted to send out CC, and as you can see, we've got the names, so you know those that are standard and those are not. Let's say we wanted to send out on, I have something set up to CC 101 to listen to. Hit the ear, move COs 102, and now CC 102 will now be sent out from this knob when I move this knob. So you can send out actually 127 MIDI CCs on this knob if you want to, and each one can have its own minimum value that it goes down to, its own maximum value, just like any of our other assignments. It can have curvatures, it can have multiple breakpoints. So now you could send out to where you are sending CC data out. So can't wait to see the Guru Eye. Oh lordy, that's frightening. So that is there. That's not one of the major features, and I should have made more of a deal out of that because it is really, really handy for all sorts of applications to work. So it's there to give you that kind of stuff. Yeah,
it's helpful for plugins that, well, actually, even something like Guru Sampler, where it's set up, or Omnisphere, for example, where it's already set up so you can modulate things with mod wheel or breath controller or any of a very small number of MIDI CCs. And you may find in some cases that using MIDI CCs, it gives you smoother parameter changes than using automation.
Right. So it's there. It's available for you to work with. Very, very cool. On top of these additions, Shane had pulled out from his backpack this 10-stage phaser that's just wonderful as an effect that is included inside of Unify. I don't know if I'm going to make it for this week. I think it might be another week for me to work on it some more, but we have a library I'm working on with my Crewmar, which is back here. It's serial number 234. It sounds beautiful. And we have sampled it really nicely, and just incredible phasing is available with PhaseMore. This is a 10-stage phaser. It was so powerful that I immediately said to Shane, we got to put in a preset window so that we can make other types of presets, because this does so much more than just your standard phase. It can go into some really cool places. And so you will see this preset window probably refined and show up in other plugins in the future, because a lot of our plugins can do a lot of different things, more than what they look like they appear that they can do. Noise box for one of them. The Omega delay has so many different things it can do with the distortion and so forth. This can go some really cool places. If do you have anything to add to the phaser before I show examples?
Yeah, well, we had a very interesting time adjusting the way some of these parameters respond, because a lot of the time to get an effect that works really well, if you do the first implementation of just the algorithm, then you play with the control and you find out, oh, it's doing a whole lot in the first half of the movement and then almost nothing in the second half, or vice versa, or it's somehow, it's not, you want it to feel linear, even though it may have to not be linear. And so you and I spent quite a while working back and forth to get a really good response for all those controls, all those parameters.
Yes. And it came out very nice. Let me show you a couple examples. Here's a drum groove. Phasers on drum grooves are cool. You might not know this, but if you go more and add this to the drum groove, I have a whole bunch of different things called frozen drums, which can give you all sorts of really cool tonalities of drums. And then the feedback and the frequency. And if you
one
want,
thing I'd like to add, by the way, John, is you know, we had this other phaser in there which was called Phase Mod.
yes,
And you always complained that it was kind of a, you know, just not a very strong effect.
yeah.
And that's because it's Phase Mod is a single stage phaser. It has a single notch filter that is being swept up and down by an LFO.
Which is very weak
most
sauce.
of the phaser sounds that we're used to that are more powerful
Yes.
use multiple stages, a whole cascade of multiple stages. This gives you from anywhere from 1 to 10 stages, and you can just change it with a knob even dynamically if you want.
Right. So here, check this out. Here, I'm going to change from a phase stage of, let's see, get back to Unify for a second. From one stage, this is like phase mod. And so even if you bring up the feedback,
we have no depth on there right now.
I do now.
Oh, you do, okay. Right,
That's one stage. 2. You can hear a big difference when you just go to 2, 3. Gets deeper. And as you go up, it just gets deeper and deeper. So you can get to 10 stages. I asked Shane to make this so we could freeze it. So now it won't change. And now you can get all sorts of really cool tonalities. Take something like this and then put Pump House on this, and all of a sudden you have some sort of really cool drum. Let's go like this, and set this to 16th notes and not 100%. You know, you can get all sorts of really, really cool stuff going on. There's other things in here that we did. I did this really cool, here's a couple more frozen gas masks. These are also really cool if you were to call it just Guru Sampler Init. Let's go over here, say Guru Sampler. This is just a saw wave. Then stop the MIDI box.
Almost gets vocal effects.
Yeah, it gets vocally. So you get all sorts of cool frequencies.
There, by the way, John, John asked me about quite a few other possibilities for this phaser, which I had to call a halt to it at some point. But in the future, you may see some further enhancements.
Yes, it could get carried away. But we have rate, if we wanted, we could have rate up to 10 hertz. One thing I'm missing that we'll probably look at adding in an update is a sync button for the rate, so you can synchronize it. Right now it's not synchronized. But you get some really, really cool, crazy things. Another thing I love to do with phasers is have a drum groove. Let's go over here and bring up the delay. And then put a phaser after this. More. And then I made a special preset over here just for delays. Where is it at?
That's a nice little example, by the way, if I can just jump in there.
Yeah.
You know, both of us figured out that the quickest way to get to phase more is just to type more. Because we know that no other plugin has the letters M-O-R-E in that sequence in it.
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying earlier. It doesn't have to be starting from the beginning or anything like that. Just any set of characters you type in, basically whatever works, go ahead and use that.
Yes. Now this here, radical, medium radical after delays. Check this out. Get this really, really cool frequency splash. And again, the frequency chooses the bottom range of the phaser depth, and then the depth controls how far up from that range it goes. So if you set it to 0 of depth, now it's just frozen there. So there's 2 ways to use this. You can use the depth if you want to have motion, and then stop it. which is the same effect as setting the rate to 0. So you can do it two different ways. You can have your depth really high and then have this at 0 and then go over here and play at the speed. And you get that kind of effect. So there's
a small difference there, by the way. So if you have if you're controlling if you want to freeze it using the depth and you suddenly freeze it really fast, then you'll probably hear a click.
Right.
Whereas with the rate, I actually put something in the code, so as soon as it goes down to 0, it kind of moves to being stopped rather than suddenly being stopped, because otherwise we were getting clicks.
Right. We're anti-click whenever possible. Shane knows that from working with me. It's like, hey, this clicks.
And, it's so much harder to do anything so that it doesn't click.
Yes, because the computers are just updating at a rate, and so they're used to just going from one value to another instead of interpolating and making it nice and smooth. So, yeah, so that is a wonderful effect. The other effect that was added that is equally wonderful is a new reverb. So if you go over here and you say data, you'll get data verb. It's this very bright, present, full spectrum tea. It's a coffee with every flavor from Colombia, right? And what's really fun, it has a pre-filter that's a low pass. So you can make it a really dark reverb there, but the reverb is still full frequency. Or you can say dampening after the reverb, or both. And if you make this reverb short, you get these really cool room settings and stuff like that that's really unique.
The name, by the way, that name data verb, I just put something into the chat. That name data verb is a short form of Dattoro. John Dattoro is a professor at Stanford University in the Karma group, where they do, basically that was much of where artificial reverberation was invented.
Yes. And so this is using his public domain, right? It's
I posted the paper PDF in the chat. It's a really nice one. You know, it's most reverb algorithms that are really good don't get published that way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if they're developed by companies, then they don't want to publish them.
Right.
For obvious reasons.
Right. Yeah. It's very wonderful of them to share this information of how they created these effects that we can implement and share them with everybody else inside of Unify. It's very, very cool. So that is the heart of the update. Are you ready for a little memory lane? Let's go back in time. So, as I said, I've gotten this folder here. There's actually 15 fairly significant updates that they actually got banners at the website. They were so important. So, to start with, the very first one is, of course, version 1.0, which was January 6th of 2020. That's here. I'll put Shane right here and these banners right here. There we go. So we're all in the picture. So this was the original version, and it was pretty good. It was a rocky road there for a little while out the gate. We learned really quickly, and very quickly followed up with version 1.12. We did 12 quick updates, and with that update, we added Polybox, which was the MIDI effect that can take any monophonic synth and propagate it to layers to make it polyphonic. We have all sorts of examples. If we go to the standard library, if you go to templates, that's where I store all the kind of like proof of how things work type of things. Polybox, here's like 5. This is a new patch. I haven't put this. We're going to be doing at some point an update, which will include a patch library update. This is one of the newer patches. But this is one where it's cycling, as you can see, through 8 different layers of 8 different, right now, Guru samplers. But if I wanted to, I could say Serum for this one. And I could say Zebra for this one. And so now I have each layer can be a different sound.
This is a really fun example of the synergy between you and me, you as a sound designer and me as a programmer. I was only ever thinking about making monosynths into polysynths or extending polyphony of a synth that has not enough polyphony.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about using Polybox to drive multiple layers with identical instances of the same plugin on it. And you said, oh no, you can go much further than that. You did the same thing with basically developing how to do a wave sequencing type of effect. And it's like, that never would have even occurred to me.
Right.
And so it's really fun the way we play off each other.
Yes. Yeah, it's been, if you saw the talks that we have where we're tanking things through and stuff, it's wonderful. I wish I could get this to be a little bit bigger. I have a little preview when Skype is in the background. It's not big enough, but you're there. You're along for the adventure. 1.1 came out. We made a whole bunch of patches. MIDI box, our MIDI file player was included, and Jitterbox. These came out specifically for Cloud City. When I released Cloud City, I needed something to play MIDI files for recycled chopped files. So like all these BPM bell patches, these were originally audio. I just played them and then I wanted to sequence them so that they could be tempo synced. And so MIDI box is playing a recycled MIDI file. And if I turn this off, if I show you on the keyboard over here, each of these little snippets is a separate sample, right? And so MIDI box is our MIDI effect that plays things like this. I could go down to drum grooves. It can load those, and those are also using MIDI files. But it does so much more because it didn't do polyphonic until later with that's when Jeff Stradling came along for the BBC library, right?
Yeah, so that was really, I mean, Jeff and also Airwave, Laurent,
yes.
Came up with basically they were just trying to do difficult things with Unify that I had never anticipated. And Laurent came up with the idea of loading an instance of Unify into itself.
Right.
And he was using the VST, and I thought about that, and I thought, you know what, I could even make that more efficient. I could make Unify into a built-in plugin inside Unify.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Laurent that started.
That turned out to work really well, and it's very, very powerful. You've now used it quite a lot. Jeff was doing similar kinds of exotic things with his MIDI layers, and that was also where we added Combo Box.
That's right.
Because we needed it to because the things that Jeff was trying to do otherwise would have required hundreds of instances of the this was the Spitfire BBC Discovery plugin.
Yeah, I'm adding that. So
that plugin isn't super smart, and so if you load many instances, then you'll end up just getting multiple copies of the same samples coming in. And so it eats up memory like there's no tomorrow. That was a big limitation, not so much CPU, but memory.
Right. And also, that's where MIDI filter got key ranges and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was when Core Station and Discover Station came out. This is where the whole concept, let's call up one example. This is from it's called Discover Station on the website, but if you own the core version of the BBC library, which is a free library. The Discover library is free from Spitfire Audio. If you don't own it, everybody should own it. It's a full orchestra with all the separate sections. This is 5 different examples where it's playing all 5 sections, the basses, the strings, the violins, the cellos. And it was at this time that we had the idea of taking MIDI box and going over here and adding the ability to, instead of just play or key transpose, where it would transpose up and down the keyboard, but setting it to poly transpose. And with poly transpose, that makes it to where now that single MIDI file you can do a complete orchestra playing all of the parts, and it's all based on simple MIDI files that are going that I sequenced.
The MIDI file itself, which is really just a rhythm. It's a monophonic thing, just playing one note at a time. But by applying that same MIDI file to every note you play, you can now turn that. You can now basically play chords and have those rhythms composed chords.
I mean, that capability is just, to me, still just mind-blowing that you can call, like, if you go over here to the BPM Orchestra, these are set up where it's playing the entire, there's one Unify that's calling up all of the strings, there's a Unify layer that's calling up all of the brass, a Unify layer that's calling up all the woodwind. Each one of these is a separate BBC Orchestra plugin. This is normally what you'd put on one track of your DAW. So in order to recreate this would require 17 tracks in your DAW, and then the hours and hours you'd have to sit there and program all these parts to work for your song, and I can interact in real time.
This is the really funny thing for me, actually, is to watch this, because you remember, John, when we went with Unify 1.0
yeah,
to NAMM 2020, and I was happy if it could load 6 different plugins at a time, and if you'd load more than 6, I'd be freaking out, thinking,
yes,
oh no, it's going to crash,
Yes.
And here we are loading not only many layers, but where individual layers are whole instances of Unify that themselves have more layers, and then you can go levels further than that, and so on. So you may have dozens and dozens of plugins working at the same time, and it's been good. It took us a while to get there.
Yes, it took a while in development. I remember so many times after we would do a live stream, and then Shane and I would have a talk afterwards, and sometimes be like, oh, well, there's a few things we've got to work on.
Yes, we have the post-mortem. We haven't had to do one of those for a while.
But remember when we got past that, and it'd be like, yay, no crash today.
Yeah. Well, again, this is just kind of the same thing as I said earlier. This is the interaction between the two of us,
yes,
and between me and other sound designers that I've had the privilege of working with through this. Is that, I'm not a sound designer. I'm not really much of a composer. And so, having the chance to work with Jeff Stradling, for example, or Bob Ditties,
yes,
these guys really challenge me and ask, come back to me and say, well, that's a limitation. Can we fix that? Is there something we can do about that?
Yeah.
And, I'd say, okay, fine, let's see what we can do. And I learn in the process, and we get a better musical tool in the process.
Yeah. It's all learning for all of us, I mean, I'm trying to get my lighting just a little bit better balanced. There. It's a learning process across the board, because, we're exploring a lot of new territory here with plugins. To do these types of things with your plugins isn't necessarily what even the plugin designers thought of when they made their plugins. They're in a host where they're being played on multiple tracks, and it's controlled by the computer and monitored and all that stuff. Not where it's being played in real time like this. We've definitely been able to take things to a different place than a lot of plugins. And there's more of that happening with other live hosts. We're not the only ones doing this, and we didn't invent this, but I think we do have a pretty special niche as far as to taking plugins and letting you do some interactive things with them that are pretty mind-blowing in real time, that you can set up. At this point with the knobs, we have like the enabling of knobs, so you can
Well, that's what it's really about, is that, it's not like we set out to make an orchestra plugin that would give you all kinds of different interesting orchestra things going. The way we approach it is, that's just a library for Unify, which is a host and does more exotic things than most hosts do. Right. That's not to say that we invented the idea of a powerful host. you look at something like Bitwig, for example, is a very powerful host. The most popular one of all is Ableton Live, incredibly powerful host.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time to set these things up, and you can't necessarily save them as libraries in the same convenient way. So we're basically, what I'm trying to do, my whole mission in this is the same thing as you started off doing, which is, rather than necessarily running out and buying more plugins, buy new sounds for the plugins you have that are developed by somebody clever,
right,
and with a really good ear and a really good sense of what sounds good, and add more value to the plugins you have. This is just trying to do the same thing by a different approach through hosting.
Yes. Yeah. And just the whole concept that all of your plugins that you can get unified libraries. I don't have them all loaded, but I currently have 3 unified libraries. We're up to 80. If I wanted to take a minute, I could make the list have considerably, but the ability that you could go to Spitfire LABS and we've unified every patch. So inside of this, if I wanted to add, let's say I wanted to add the dulcimer from the Labs library, all I just say is load this into a new, actually just instrument 1. I don't need the whole plugin, just the instrument. And now
it's funny, Dean, that was another thing that you came up with, was this idea of unified libraries.
Right. Yeah.
It's been such an adventure of figuring out what works and what doesn't, and what's practical and what's not. Early on, we figured, well, because we can load any plugin, that we could create libraries for patch libraries that people would buy for combinations of third-party plugins.
Yeah.
But we tried that even for single third-party plugins plus what's in Unify, and discovered it's not a good business model, because you can only sell to customers who A, have Unify, and B, also have that third-party plugin.
Right.
So that pretty much killed that idea.
Well, we still do that some.
We still do that a little bit, but
and
where it's become now is what we're calling Unify enhancements, or what a lot of sound designers are calling Unify enhancements for patch libraries they create for those plugins.
Right.
But the other thing that you came up with that kind of replaced that in many ways was the idea of a unified library. So, getting at the patches or the presets. I'm trying to separate patches for Unify and presets for plugins. Getting at a plugin's presets inside of Unify is always a 2-stage process. You have to open that plugin, open its GUI, and then use whatever patch browsing interface it has. And some of them are not so good. Some of them are great.
Right.
But either way, they're all different.
Yes.
And you thought of the idea was that, well, suppose you just made a patch in Unify that just basically has one instance of that plugin, and you open, preset number 1, you save it as a patch. You open preset number 2, you save it as a patch. Now you've got the idea of being able to very quickly access all the presets of your favorite plugins. And then the killer idea was, you came to me and said, well, if there was a way that you could see these patches and say, can I load that automatically into a new Unify layer so that it goes in addition to, well, either new Unify layer or just added as a new layer. The way we ended up doing it was the new Unify layer approach. And so these ideas just build on each other. And again, the result is you get a more musical, more interesting, artistic kind of a tool to play with.
Yes, it just opens up. It's like, one of the things that we do for the unified libraries that's important is that we name the patches in the same basic format between all the different plugins, because each one of them, some of them will take and have a 2-letter thing at the beginning. Some will have a little bit more descriptive. Most of them don't have anything. And it's so hard to find, this goes back to an argument from the Korg workstation days that we used to have between what we would call the presentation way of doing voicing, which is where the patches change with every patch, versus the producer way of using something. And in a producer situation, you're sitting in a studio, you're looking for a bass, and you don't want to have to guess the name of every frickin' bass as there's spaced out between 512 patches. And so the producer library puts everything that's in a certain category together, so you can just cycle through the basses and find the one that works. And so I decided a long time ago that's how I want to organize my libraries, because for me, if a pad doesn't want to work, if it doesn't work with my song I'm working on, I want to find another pad. And I don't want to have to be like searching and like hope and pray that this, there's all sorts of cases where I'd be searching and all of a sudden you get some distorted, really loud, crappy patch that would pop up while you're like looking for pads. It's just like takes you out of your voicing space and all that kind of stuff. So check this out. While Shane was talking, I added more unified libraries, just a few. So this is just some of them. This isn't all of them. And the power of this way of working is just that you can say init, start at 0, load one patch. Let's say we wanted to start with something from Nylon Sky, which is one of the Spectrasonics extension libraries. I've been given permission. I can't do the factory library for Omnisphere, but we can save out the extensions. So I could go over here and I could choose a...
John, if I can just jump in here for a second.
Sure.
I wanted to share with somebody, with everyone, something that one of our users has posted in the chat. You can probably see it there from Yves Bouillet. He says, I've finally been able to feel just a bit comfortable with DAW software. It's because of Unify. And so he actually found that he used it. Using Unify has helped him to understand better how DAWs work. That's really nice.
That's really great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's the process, getting comfortable with the concept of there being an instrument and then the channel strip. We do it a little bit differently than a DAW because it's horizontal instead of vertical. But yeah, that's beautiful. Let's say we start with this. What's really fun is that you can go to any library from anybody and go through these patches, and all the patches are organized. Down here, changes to Unify layer, call up a patch, and you have no idea what this relationship between patches is going to be. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you can open up that Unify layer.
I've said before that one of the main things that I like to use Unify for is it's easier for just playing around with my plugins, and I have a lot of them, especially instruments inside Unify, than it is in firing up a DAW. But whenever I find a nice combination, I just save it as a preset, and then I can go to my DAW, open Unify in the DAW, and open that preset again, and I'm right back where I was before, except now I'm in the DAW and I can record.
Right, now you can start writing a song and produce.
Yeah, exactly, start writing a song.
Yeah, it's a beautiful world. Let's keep going on our sequence. We're going to take... The whole live stream is going to be, which is fun. I really enjoyed this. This is fun to kind of like go back and look at the memory of what we've done. And let's see, go back to this. And then after that came 1.10, where you could drag the layers. So 1.10 was where you could finally take this and change it to be different in order. And just so you know, it's very complicated what is going on, because each one of these layers could have plugins assigned to macro knobs, and Shane's able to take into account everything that's going on. And if I had 8 different layers, let's say we said duplicate this, so you've got a whole bunch of layers. If I change this and it has some knob assignments and I move it here, it automatically smartly changes all the references on the macro knobs so that the knobs and the plugin layers stay connected even if you change their order, which
that was hard. Some things are hard.
Yes. Well, it worked out beautifully. Fade and curvature in the velocity note ranges was added here as well. For those of you that don't know, let's do this. Let's just go to the standard library. And
so this was 1.10, not 1.10. Yeah.
Yeah, 1.1.
So we're still at the 1.1 level.
I know. I know.
We gotta move faster, John.
Okay. Well, so what this means is that it's so hard. Let's replace this layer, because another cool thing that Unify had since the beginning was that you could go to layer and say empty, or load a layer preset. But also each layer, if you want, there's this layer preset right here to change that. You could make your own favorite plugins and patches into layer presets so you can call them up. You could have a serum folder with your favorite serum patches. You could have like my basses that I need for my certain genre of basses type folders. You could make as many folders as you want. and the Unify Guru sampler, let's just say piano, right? So if you right click up here, you can change the keyboard range, and there's also keyboard range you can change here. We will fix this someday. We haven't done this yet, but if I go over here and I say duplicate this layer, I can right click in the middle of this and change this range so that the two, and let's have this one be at a weird tuning so I know when I hit this. Let's say I want the bottom note to be C, and I want the, there. So you hear the split point, right? If I wanted to, I could drag this up, and then we added these tool tools. If you hold down Control, Option, or Alt, and you click right here, you're able to put a fade. And this will now take by velocity. It's not by volume, it's by velocity. And now, hear how that one? So if you have brass and you have trombones going into trumpets, you could have them overlap and then put fades. If you want, you can hold down Control and Shift and actually change the percentage of the curvature of the fade so that it more, this, if I do this, it's going to be more radically changing. Very big change here, and then a smaller change from there. So we have this really cool abilities like that. Guru Sampler had reverse sample mode, which we use in some really cool examples. Unify 1.2, that's where Combo Box showed up. And Combo Box is actually what I need to use to show Orange Vocoder, which is a wonderful plugin from Synaptic. I want to give a shout out to them. They were able to send me Orange Vocoder to check out, and it is a mind-blowing vocoder that sounds incredible. Let me show this in Shane. Do you want to add a little commentary to that while we're...
About which, sorry?
Combo Box.
Yeah, Combo Box. Yeah, so Combo Box is really... The idea is that, you know, before Unify, there were a number of sort of plug-in chaining utilities. One of the big ones is Gig Performer, which only runs as an app, for example, but it's very good.
Right.
In fact, it's incredibly powerful if you're interested in that sort of thing, scriptable and everything like that. There was a really wonderful tool, free tool called Element by Cushview,
right?
Which has this same type of interface, what you call the I don't know, the boxes and wires or node. Sometimes it's called a node style of interface, but basically, where every time you just load plugins, any combination of plugins as you want, but then you have to use your mouse to drag these kind of colored wires
right
to the inputs and outputs. And you didn't like that approach, which is why you came up with that whole design that Unify has. That's multiple layers and everything. All the connections are basically predefined. Makes it very fast to use, but sometimes you need an escape valve.
Right.
You need a way to be able to connect your plugins in any way you want, and to deal with plugins that have multiple outputs, plugins that have sidechain inputs, that kind of stuff. So basically, I gave you Combo Box, which is that node style of interface, which you can use when you need it.
And it can also do these types of examples. This is using it for a vocoder, which would be really hard. It's really hard inside of Ableton or Logic to figure out how to route audio from one channel strip to another channel strip where you have an audio effect to do things. Combo Box lets you visually put stuff like that, so that here's your MIDI input. It's going to trigger both an audio file player that's playing me talking, and then it's got a Guru sampler that's the synth sound, and welcome to Unify. It can play the audio file and run it into the free MDA vocoder in this case. Welcome to Unify. Well, here's another example of that, but now using Orange Vocoder instead of that, and it's welcome to Unify. The fidelity of this is just mind-blowing to me, how they did this. You can go to the vocoder page. Welcome to Unify. You can get so much fidelity out of it. You've got all of these different... Welcome to Unify. Welcome to Unify. The future is here, my friend. I mean, it's just beautiful. Welcome to Unify. Welcome to Unify. So, it can do really cool examples. There's one other example of this I want to show, which is the drums. OV at the top of the list. Oh, wait, I did DV. Orange vocoder, BPM drums. Oh, the other way to do this is if you go to instruments and you say, oh, does instruments not look at audio effects?
Instruments will not look at audio effects, no.
Okay.
Generally. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's ways that you can put them in, but...
right. Oh, I gotta go vocoder. Here we go. So I did it right here. So here is the pad with the built-in. And then here's the same thing with orange vocoder. And again, you've got so much more fidelity over the sound. All these really, really cool vibes, which then you have the bands here. And I've had orange vocoder since version 1 from Steinberg like 20 years ago. If you want to get more information, I think there's a demo you can download to try it out. The orange vocoder from Zynaptic is at zynaptic.com/orange vocoder. Introductory special pricing. The math behind this is just stunning. It sounds so good. So if you need the ultimate in vocoding, it takes the price as far as I'm concerned. So much more flexible, but Unify's combo box allows it to be really easy to set up. That type of thing. Right click, you have the whole list of all the instruments. You can choose any plugin you want, add them, have a whole string of different things. Actually, Jeff used this pretty extensively in the Discover library for like having certain ranges of instruments wrap around and play an octave high, like the cellos, for example. And as you go down the keyboard, you get to a certain range, it would start playing the cellos an octave up so that they just didn't become like mushy and stuff like that. Wonderful ideas and implementations. So Combo Box 1.2. Let's see, there's another picture of Combo Box in play. 1.3, what was the big thing? Updating multiple patches. That's where we did all the contact compatibility, trying to work with...
which then Native Instruments immediately killed as soon as I had it out. Yes.
Yeah, it broke.
It's a never-ending arms race to keep up with big plugin manufacturers.
Yes. So we won't talk about that very much. 1.4, AAX was finally included inside of Unify. We added the Pump House LFO type inside of Guru Sampler, which is wonderful. I got a hold of Chow. That's Jason Chowting. Is that his name? Jatin
Chowdhury.
Jatin Chowdhury.
He's a former student at Stanford in the Karma place. Really brilliant guy, brilliant programmer.
Yes.
Very nice plugin designer.
Yes.
And he started producing plugins, and some of the first ones were free.
Yes.
And he allowed us to include them.
Yes. And so we have both the Chow Matrix, which is the craziest delay on the planet. Play with that. And Chow Tape is a wonderful vintage. It's called Chow Tape, right?
Yeah, Chow Tape model, I think.
Chow Tape model. Thank you. Is just really cool for getting all sorts of lo-fi, vibey things. 1.5, we included the ability to automatically save patches. I don't know if you know this, but when you're editing and then change patches, if you didn't save it, Unify automatically saves that patch. And if you right-click on Revert, it will list all of your previous edits. Like if I wanted to go back to my orange vocoder patch, it's right there. If I want to go back to the other patches that I edited, you can go into Unify's settings and actually change how many auto saves, up to 10 auto saves that it will automatically keep track of, so that when you, in case there's I cannot tell you how many times this has saved my skin, where I accidentally click something and the patch goes away and it's like, oh shoot, I lost that patch. Well, anytime you do that, Unify is saving it before it changes patches. Every time. So if you go back here and say boom, it calls it right back up the way it was.
The thing about that, by the way, is that people had been asking repeatedly, can we have an undo function within Unify?
Yeah.
And there were two issues with that. One is that any kind of program really has to be a full undo capability has to be designed in from the beginning. It's not something you can tack on afterwards. Yeah. So we were stuck with that. But the other thing about it is that some of the changes that you can make in Unify they have a lot of consequences. For example, loading huge numbers of samples or something like that, things that could be very time-consuming operations, and sometimes keeping track of them could also involve large amounts of memory being used. So I didn't really want to do a full undo. So the idea of saying, well, it's a partial undo where you can go back to previously saved states was the compromise I came up with.
It's a really great way, because I mean, and you can't be responsible for watching what parameters are being changed all the time inside of all the plugins that are not even Plugin Guru created sponsored plugins, right? So undo, it's just really hard. Like undo this thing inside a Hive. That means that we'd have to be recording every change you do inside of Hive all the time. I mean, just the amount of networking and just not practical. So this is a really cool in between where if I'm editing and if I change this to Serum, I use it just because it could be any plugin, but I'd done this, right? And then all of a sudden I change patches. I went, oh shoot. If I go to revert, right there it is with the Serum that it will keep track of anything that you do. When you change patches, if you didn't save it, it's taking and saving a snapshot of it. It actually, if you go into the Reveal in Finder, I can show you where this is. If you go to the folder, Reveal in Finder folder, and go to the libraries folder, actually it's one step up. It's inside of the Unify folder. Auto save patches is right there. And right there is for all the saved patches. It timestamps them when it's saved, and then it saves the patch. So if you ever need to get anything back, it is the actual file on your computer you can go back to. So it's a great time saver. It has saved me countless times when I accidentally changed patches and didn't intend to or something like that. So it's better than undo because it's keeping track of everything in case you lose track of where you are. So it's wonderful. 1.6, I'm not sure what we did for 1.6. I just have the banner was just Unify 1.6.
Oh, I'll tell you now in a minute.
Oh, we could go to the changelog.
Yeah, look at the changelog and see what happens here. You have to go back several.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1.6 had enabling and disabling MIDI to layers.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of a big one.
That was huge.
Lots of small issues about how well it works in a host and so on.
Well, that enable was such a... Let me show you that real quickly. Let's go to the TX816 library. Let me call up electric piano, for example, right? So electric piano, here's... By the way, in the Unified, on the Unify page, if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a Unified TX816 library. That's using the DX that's built into Unify. So that is a free library of the patches that came originally with the TX816, where it loads up 8 different DX7 patches to make one patch. And what we added in 1.6 was the ability to hit the little green MIDI. Anytime Unify gets MIDI, these little lights on the far left light up. You can actually click those and that will turn it into... It's different than mute. The way mute works is that it's playing and then it's immediately gone. It cuts it off immediately. What's really fun with this is that these will be ringing out. I can turn new things on. I could turn things off, and it never mutes them until I play new notes. So I can go from just a single patch. And then the really cool thing with this is that you can assign this to a knob. So you go from piano, and then turn things on just by clicking the little buttons. And this goes for whatever plugin you have on this layer. It could be a MIDI thing that's doing pulsing and sequencing and stuff. You can turn these on and off. They won't go away until you play new notes. Which is just incredible. Like if we went over here to Zebra really quick, and let's call it some sort of a BPM patch that's playing along with this. So let's say Dropsicles. I have no idea what this is, but let's see. Drums. And let's have Flapper join us too. Okay, so I have two different BPM patches playing. I could click the little disables. They're still playing until I play new notes. When I'm ready. Now they're gone. I could turn them back on. They don't show up until I played new notes. That is just the most incredibly cool bitching. That's one of my favorite things inside of Unify, to be honest with you, because it lets you play with these layers in this really fluid way. You can have one knob that can cycle through choosing different licks. In fact, there's a patch inside of the standard library where I'm doing that. If you go to the templates, where's it at? Is it three-way? Or I used it for one of the violin string patches, I know. So let's give me a second, because it's just so wonderful to be able to do this. Some of these that say like knob to switch, so you have the trio, and then I can just move this to play just the harmonics, or I don't know why they're not playing, but you see how you can cycle between them, right? So that ability is just wonderful, and that came in Unify 1.6. So, yay! I love that update. 1.7, that's when we added Morgan with the Leslie, with the monophonic harmonic. So there's all these B3 patches inside of the Unify library. If you go to the organ category, L and organ, these are all really cool. Shane made a B3, and he made it kind of in a Frankenstein style because the oscillator for the tone bars is separated from the Leslie effect, which is separated from what is doing the percussion, so that different things could be doing the percussion effect differently than the organ, so you could put the Leslie Morgan cab on synth parts or anything like that. It's really, really cool. So anything to add to that? Oh, we lost your audio.
Sorry, I had to mute while I was typing. Yeah, Morgan is fully open source. You can find it under on GitHub under Plugin Guru /Morgan. And the idea about it was I love tone wheel organs, but there are some wonderful ones on the market, and they're really detailed emulations of every aspect of the Hammond design. I wasn't going to do that. What I was interested in doing, though, was to explore how to do things that were kind of beyond what taking the basic ideas of what a Hammond could do, and kind of going a little bit beyond that, which is where we had come up with that name way back at the original NAMM before I'd done any of this. We had this idea of something that was more than organ, so we call it Morgan, and that's what the result was. Yeah, we had that at the January 2020 NAMM show. We were showing people that was going to be included in one of our updates. We finally got around to it. Music you see. We will be releasing at some point. We're talking about two things. The next update to Unify will probably be a paid upgrade. We'll be adding some of the features that take a lot of work and time to do, like audio outputs, flexibility, things like that. So it will be our first time of actually putting a fee for an upgrade to Unify. That's probably what we're going to be looking at, I would think, next. We've talked about it a little bit. We don't have everything
solid and planned because we're hitting summer and stuff like that. But
well, the other thing is that, anytime I do any kind of an update, there will be problems found.
yeah,
And then I'm kind of hostage to that for a while until that settles down.
yeah,
And that's where we are right now. Somebody found an issue with VST3 effects that I wasn't aware of.
on PC from what we know,
So,
right?
it happens.
Yeah, yeah. But that's on the Windows side of VST3 issues, right?
No, actually, it's more general.
Bigger.
It's what it is. You see, is it's plugin dependent. So, I won't know about some of these issues unless I try lots and lots of plugins, or the beta testers, whoever's testing it, tries lots and lots of plugins and tells me, oh, well, this one doesn't work.
Right.
And that's this time around, because we really wanted to get this out sooner than usual.
Yeah.
We didn't want to have it hung up in testing for weeks as these major updates usually are.
Yeah.
So, well, then you take a little bit of a risk.
Yeah. Well, and there's always the risk because it's not guaranteed that the beta team is going to try the specific plugin that somebody tries that breaks. So, that's why we appreciate feedback and we reply to feedback as quickly as possible. If you ever have questions, Unify support at pluginguru.com is here. I'll put it into our chat too. Unify support.
It's a little bit like how in the world of PCs you can mix and match components if you've got a desktop PC, and so sometimes there are problems that one type of replaceable component doesn't work so well with another one, and that's not because the manufacturers are lazy and they don't do adequate testing. It's because they can't do adequate testing because the number of potential combinations is astronomical.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it becomes greater than the number of the atoms in the universe. And really, we have to deal with every conceivable plugin that has ever been made or will ever be made.
Right.
And then we also have to work as a plugin, multiple formats on two different platforms in every DAW that's ever been made. And realistically, I or anybody can't do that kind of testing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a miracle we are where we are. It's a testament to Shane's dedication to figuring things out and knowing how to fix them. I could see
sometimes I don't know how to fix it. Sometimes I have to just experiment till I can figure it out. There's an awful lot of this stuff, of this technology, that's not really written down. It's not like there's known best practices.
It's very, very wild.
A lot of
west.
it is, even the big players.
Yeah.
Do things by trial and error.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, that's why we kind of, it is software. Things will be found that no matter what you do. It's dominoes. One domino is going to affect another domino. And you don't know that until you have a testing ground of people trying it out and getting back to us and letting us know that something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, Floating Lotus just said in the chat, I used to be a software engineer. I left that world too stressful. I hear you, Lotus.
Yeah. No, we've gone through, it is stressful at times because there's a lot of responsibility on Shane to make sure it's working for all of you guys in the chat and everybody that's going to use Unify. It's if you let it be a magnifying glass, it can get to be a lot. And he has taken the stress quite well. You look really good, Shane.
Well, thank you. I mean, I take it personally because, I realize people are trying to use this to achieve their own goals in music creatively and through exploring of sound and so on. And I know what it's like when something doesn't work. And so, it's tough when I work like crazy to get a major update out. And then, the very next day, somebody comes to me and says, oh, gee, I've just found that there's several of these plugins that are not working anymore. It's like, oops. That, I feel bad because I didn't test all those cases. I couldn't test all those cases, but I didn't.
Right.
And so what do? Well, I jump on it and I try to work it out.
We'll fix it. But it's one of those things where this is a case where one of the major sample players called Hallion, there was an issue. And to fix it, Shane had to do some potentially significant things under the hood. And then everybody has been testing to make sure that it hasn't affected things. And so that type of stuff, something can fall through the net, you know? We're all human. It is software and it is fixable. So, you know, it's step by step, right? So anyway, 1.7, the other thing that came with 1.7 that is really wonderful was our whole trigger box, which is this. I use this for the Mega Magic piano and for Mega Magic Keys is technically the name of the library, where for release samples on pianos and stuff like that, for playing out the noises and so forth. Check this out. It's got the ability to have what's really fun with this is if you guys want to play with this, you can put trigger box on any synthesizer sound. If you go to the load presets and hold down, there's presets, and there's one that says play sound on note off, which means that when you play a note off, boom, its probability is at 100%, but we have a slider here where you can make it smaller percentages. So just every now and then will pop up every 7%. And then this opened up all sorts of really cool doors for other libraries, like Novum's library, where I use that probability on note on. So if we go to Novum, that's up here, Dream State for Novum, the BPM pads. Let's see. Oh, this is the Dream State for Novum. Dream State right here is the whole thing. If you go to a lot of these where it's playing a pad and it's BPM, it's using, let's see, CC Writers. We find it's got a trigger box going on. I guess you're looking for a patch that says percentage BPM plug, maybe? Huh. Wasn't it this or was it, I can't remember which libraries it was where I started really getting into, I think with the, with this, I also use probability quite a bit, where you have the ability to have it a percentage so that the notes, or maybe it was Mega Magic Pads. I think it was Mega Magic Pads where I really had a good time with this stuff. I don't know if I have that here to show you, but in Mega Magic Pads for Unify, that library in specific, I kind of went carried away with probability because it's really fun. You can set it to where you can have it playing something that would normally just be this irritating arpeggiator of notes and set it to 2%, and that becomes a little happy melody playing and stuff like that to work with. 1.8, we got the fuzzy dice, and we got colored layers. This came out in support for the Bob Didi's, his first library, Renegade. He wanted to show key ranges for the different sample maps and so forth. 1.82 was the first version that supported Apple Silicon computers, so we brought that out. 1.9 got a CC Writer, which gave us the ability to do real-time control inside of Unify layers, which is really fun. And now we're at Unify 1.10. So it's been a very fun adventure. A lot of fun. That's 15 different major upgrades that I did banners for the website when we release updates. So it's a lot.
Yeah, in between there, by the way, was Unify 1.9, which added Apple Silicon support.
Well, 1.82 was the actual first one with Apple Silicon support. We did it as a beta, remember?
Oh, yeah, perhaps. I can't even remember these things. Yeah, we were sort of experimenting with it.
Yes.
It took me 8 months to get Apple Silicon support to work as well as it does. Just making a plugin, if you just have a simple plugin that you want to convert to Apple Silicon, that was a very, very quick operation. The problem is our plugin has to load other plugins.
Yes.
Including some that might not be Apple Silicon capable.
Right.
And Apple built Magic Bridging into their operating system, but only for their plugin format, which is audio units.
Right.
Most of the work that we do with plugins is with VST and VST3 because those exist on both Windows and Mac platforms. So I kind of had to duplicate that Apple Magic, which they built with their teams of hundreds of programmers, hundreds of extremely well-paid programmers. I had to figure out how to do that by myself for VST and VST3, and I did it. And one of the interesting things, by the way, about 1.10, there's an issue with AAX plugins. The AAX 1.10 plugin is not available on PC yet because of a signing issue. I'll get that sorted out in probably the next couple of weeks. My signing certificate was only good for 3 years and it ran out. Getting another one is not a trivial thing. It just may take a little while. But on the Mac, one of the things that I did with the AX plugin 1.10 is it is now Apple Silicon Universal. So it will run on Intel or Apple Silicon. And when running natively as Apple Silicon, it will still allow you to bridge your non-Apple Silicon plugins of any kind into Unify, into Pro Tools, which is, I don't think there's anything else can do that.
No, if you go here and you load Contact, even the current version of Contact, oh wait, that's Complete Control. I don't need Complete Control. Hit return, so it's going to load this up. No, go away.
Yeah, that's right. Some of these.
Oh, by the way, Complete Control, look at it's also not Silicon native. So Complete Control works inside of Unify, even though it won't work other than the audio unit version on your Mac. But if you go to Contact, it's also, as well as Massive, as well as Absinthe, and the other Native Instruments plugins, they're very, 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 very slow on getting Silicon support. There's most of their stuff still doesn't have. I think is Massive X. I don't even know if Massive X is Silicon native. Let's see. Nope, it's not.
No, some of these plugins that are very old, they for these guys to switch to Apple Silicon to provide Apple Silicon support is a really big deal, because they can't even rebuild those plugins anymore because they were built with very out-of-date tools. Right. So they're kind of stuck. We have a bit of an advantage in Unify using the Juice platform. By the way, I just want to pop in here. There's somebody in the chat saying, Shane, what is your take on the new Clap plugin format? Are you considering adding that to Unify? Good question. I think Clap is very exciting. I am very interested in having that in Unify 2 at some point. But it's pretty much going to take a rewrite of Unify to get support for Clap. It's complicated.
Yes. There's the way that Unify does its updating for like the macro knobs to the plugins. In order for it to be to Clap and MIDI 2 standards, it has to be sample accurate. And Unify doesn't work that way. So it's going to take complete redo of how it keeps track of updating things to be much faster and accurate. That's where we'll get like real-time control on the knobs. And, one reason we have like the CC writer kind of doing it. If you make that very fast, you'll hear stepping of certain parameters. That's because Unify doesn't have sample accurate control from the macro knobs. It's just that kind of calculation is really CPU intensive. And there's ways to optimize it over time and stuff like that. But that's partly why it works the way it does. But that's a whole redo of plus to have each note be able to be. Unify can handle MPE right now, but the instruments and plugins that come with Unify are not MPE compatible. So that's a big mountain to look at climbing. So.
That's right. The thing is, it would be lovely to have every conceivable technology added to Unify, but we have to pick our battles. Somebody was asking on the forum recently about features for live performers. Yeah. And one of the things I have to deal with is how many of our users perform live at all with keyboards. I don't think that it is anywhere near a majority. I think it's quite a small minority. And so I need to focus on features because there's only one of me, my dad used to say, count the hands. And so I've got to focus on the features which give the most bang for the buck, the most value to the most people.
Right. Yeah. By the way, this is a good point to bring up. Along with this update, which is a free update to everybody that owns Unify. This is the first time we've done this, just because there is truly a massive amount of work that Shane does to make this all happen. And so for the first time, along with the update, there is an option to basically say thank you and put some financial support into Shane's pocket. And it's also a really, really in-depth, step-by-step, great detailed owner's manual of the updates. Oh, I have this going on. So let's go over here. I should be logged out from my administration stuff on the page. If you go to pluginguru.com, the second banner that shows up, and we'll have a thing, is this 1-hour video tutorial from Shane. And you can go here. There's multi-tiered pricing starting at $10 all the way up to $250, whatever you can afford. This goes directly to Shane. And it's to pay basically for, as you can hear, the literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of thought, planning, design, discussion, and then implementation, and then bug fixing. You know, the next week or so, Shane is full-time going to be updating Unify just to handle the things that we find that are not working quite right. So it's an opportunity to say thank you and get a video tutorial in return that is helpful to you. But it's financial support for all this time that he does. If you've owned Unify for 3 years, you've gotten all these updates, all these features without paying anything for any of them. So it's an opportunity to say thank you, and I encourage all of you to please do so if you can. And it's a great thing, great opportunity. So thank you, Shane, for making that video. At first, I was planning just to do a Skype thing, and we were going to talk for 10 minutes. And then
yeah,
you know,
don't get me started. I took the opportunity to say everything I wanted to say, and then it took an hour. So that's the way it goes.
No, it's great. And I think people appreciate that kind of detail, because when I'm doing like the video announcing Unify and stuff like that, I'm showing the feature. I'm kind of going not anywhere to the, I mean, he goes through, if you go to the change log for Unify, check this out. This changelog has all of these parameters, and Shane will go through all of them with you in this video, explaining why he had to do these things, what they're about, you know, showing you how they work, showing you to a level of detail that I don't show in the videos that I create for the channel, because those are just blanket, like, you know, here's the updates. This is far more in-depth. So if you want an in-depth video on this update, and at the same time, it's financial support and appreciation to Shane, it's a win-win for everybody. So go to the pluginguru.com page and pick that up if you can. Shane, Danielle is asking if you'll allow a German translation of your voiceover. Oh, you muted. You're mute. Your microphone's muted.
Yes, I was just muting it while I was typing an answer, of course.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, once something goes on to YouTube, you can pretty much go nuts with it.
Right.
For stuff like this, I mean, this is just educational material. I don't see any reason why not to. The only thing is, it would be nice if you didn't redo the video and redistribute the video.
Right.
Yeah, that's a problem, because then everybody just gets it. All the German users get it without paying. Or if you could just encourage the German users to come and buy a copy, and even though it's in English. I don't know. I mean, you know, all of this came up, John, because you and I were talking about this update, and you said to me, you know, I think this update should be at least at $19 or $20, something like that. And I said, look, John, you know, we can't suddenly turn around to people having a new update that fixes important bugs, even though it has some nice new things. We can't suddenly turn around to people saying, well, we're going to withhold this update for you because you have to pay.
Yeah.
And that I've always done that. The alternative is I do what many other companies do, which is, you know, they bring out a plugin. Maybe you get a couple of minor updates with a couple bug fixes, but basically then they go away for a year or more.
If ever.
Then suddenly there's a version 2. It's completely rewritten. Everything is different and so on. You almost have to buy it again. And maybe there's an upgrade price or whatever. But, you know, this has been something where the ideas have flowed so fast that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to say, well, no, I don't want to put anything new into Unify. We've had no end of ideas of new things for Unify, and I think it's been more fun to just put them in.
Yeah,
it doesn't make as much money, but you know, you don't do everything for money.
No, well, and we've talked about it. It continues to grow. Word gets out. I think these are features that a lot of people that might have been on the fence about are going to be excited about, because this makes using your plugins for everybody so much more fun. Because knob assignments for knobs and loading plugins from a list has never been a fun experience. So to have that capabilities is great.
Yeah, well, that was always torture. I have to admit that. It took me a while to get to the point where we have an easier way to do it.
Yeah. So support Shane if you can, and thank you to all of you that have already. It's great to see so many people have already bought the video. Thank you to all of you. I think we're going to wrap it up there and say thank you for joining me for this live stream, Shane. It's the whole time you came along.
I did. My wife is going to wonder where I am now, so I'm going to have to finish up.
Well, you have the rest of the day to enjoy, and although you're 4 hours ahead of me, so
I thank everybody for being on this ride with us with Unify and putting up with its failings from time to time.
Yes, and its perfection most of the time. Shout out to Shane on the chat. Let's all do a big shout out to our favorite sound designer, sound programmer. And shout out from wherever you are in the world too. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a fun little trip down memory lane. 3+ years, almost 3.5 years now. Wow.
Almost 3.5 years, yeah. And then a year before that, building Unify 1.0.
Right. Yeah. Long time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. It's fun to be able to put something out that's helpful to so many people. You know, it's one thing if you're just making a synth or something like that, and a lot of people can take joy from that. But this is something that can put all of your plugins into a different place than they were before, and that's kind of a fun situation to be behind creating. Finland, look at that. Hey, good to see you. I'm always taking. Thank you, Nicholas. That's really nice of you. Thank you, Michael, Gottfried, Dave. Also, don't forget, we have out the free collective library for those of you new to Unify. There's a library that we've made called the Unify Collective. It's done and it's free. It has 288 patches of samples. There's 464 patches in total, over 1 gigabyte of samples. Our customer, you guys, many of you contributed samples to it. If you go to pluginguru.com to products, it's under the free tab. I got to update my website because the products page pull down list has gotten so large that it doesn't even show even half of everything anymore. So we'll work on that. All right. Thank you all. Cheers. Thank you, Ian. Ian was one of our wonderful contributors to the collective library. Gave us like 10 years of his sample collective work to go through and pick out sounds for the library. It's really, really fun. All right. Thanks again. Thank you, Shane.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody. Bye, John.
See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Have a great week, my friends. Be creative. There's a sale at the website. 40% off most libraries for Mother's Day because everybody knows moms need killer synth patches. So go to pluginguru.com, save some money, and we'll see you in the next live stream next week. And thank you again for joining. Sorry it's a little late today. Had a few technical difficulties getting things set up, but I'm glad you joined us for the stream. So thank you. See you guys later. Cheers.